How would we know? What quantitative way could we know if product management is doing a good job?
I'm gonna triple down with techniques from the where CTOs share the tales and the comments. So started two big names and the visions unfold. How many CTOs will share the stories untold?
Welcome to this week's episode of How Many CTOs Does It Take, aka CTO Therapy. My name is Scott Porad, and I am here with my trusty CTO therapist,
Brad Hefta-Gaub.
Brad. How are you today? Brad? Here's the question.
What's the question?
Today, are you in the chair or are you on the couch?
I think I'm on the couch today, but I don't know.
Okay, well, I'll sit in the chair and I'll try do my best. I don't play a therapist on TV, nor do I play one in real life, but I will do my best. Brad, how are you feeling?
Well,
What's going on?
well, we just had today was a really interesting day. We had a incident retrospective. We had essentially a whatever you want to call it, Sev Zero incident where some customer domains were having problems with logging in. Like one of the most classic, like if they can't log in, they can't use the system.
Hmm.
And the team, this incident happened a couple days ago, but today we had our meeting to kind of go over the results of the incident investigation and the fixes and everything. And the team basically discovered that there was a bug in code and they had to fix it. And that bug was preventing a particular subset of users to be able to reset their passwords. And this subset of users were essentially these legacy accounts from a long, long time ago where um, we didn't have like a kind of robust authentication system, but we had kind of kept this code around. So, classic example of some tech debt, but actually kind of product debt, right? Like it was a bug, but the bug was in this code that had the product team still wanted to keep alive, but the engineering team had kind of assumed was no longer being used.
Hmm.
Yeah, so how am I feeling? Well, I'm feeling really proud of the team for they did a really great job. Like they're a pretty novice team. They don't we don't have a lot of customers. We don't have a lot of runtime with this. So they're a pretty novice team in doing this sort of thing. This is only really like the second kind of real incident they've had to deal with. And they did a great job of following the playbook that I gave them of doing a really high quality investigation, getting a really high quality timeline. We've got a bunch of recently installed, recently like in the last 3 or 4 months, we rolled out OTel observability, and they were able to use that to actually just figure out what the heck happened. So that was cool. That was all good stuff. But the team was really beating themselves up because they felt like, why weren't we advocating stronger to eliminate this feature? Because not only was there this bug in the code, but the feature itself has weaknesses to it, vulnerabilities to it. And we
Hmm.
kind of kept the old vulnerable feature around, and that was kind of the fruit of the poison tree that
Hmm.
caused the incident. So it's a tough one, right? Like the product. This is a great example where like the product owners kind of have to be in that egoless retrospective, and they need to be able to consider their part in the incident.
Yeah. So why didn't the team advocate harder for that, stronger for that, more, whatever?
I mean, it's a good question. In the end, myself as the CTO and kind of the lead developer on the feature, we're both kind of saying like, yeah, I blame myself for not advocating stronger to get rid of this,
Hmm.
feature. Um, there was a perception within the product team that for these old legacy users, they didn't want to add any friction to make them switch over to some new system. And there was maybe a little bit of a misunderstanding of how much friction there really was, because it turns out there's probably not that much friction. They get like an invite email and then click through it, and boom, next thing you know, they're logged in. So
Hmm.
But there's the classic, real concern like, hey, emails come in and get dropped into spam folders, and people are like, I can't log in anymore. How do I log in? Um, I mean, to answer your question directly, like, why didn't the team advocate better? I think there's some soul searching going on, within the engineering team about like, why did we why did we let this fall through the cracks?
I have a more interesting why, patient Brad.
Yeah,
Because why? I mean, because someone didn't. Big whoop. I mean, it happens. But I actually think here's a more interesting why. Software across the industry gets bloated. It
yeah,
happens. Software gets bloated. And software is expensive to build and expensive to maintain. Yet I have never been anywhere that's I've never worked anywhere on any project or any company that's been good or disciplined, I'm not sure the right word to use, about, let's call it grooming the bloat, about going back and saying, do we really need this?
yeah,
I can think of actually one time not that long ago. Um, this is when I was primarily working on Dolly. So this is the 2021 through 2024 timeframe when we were kind of building, we weren't totally rewriting something, but effectively we were kind of rewriting something. And there were all these features, there was a long list of features that we needed to include. And we were able to persuade product management, like, well, look, let's do this very, very what seems like an uncomfortably bare bones version of this new rev of this thing and put it out there. And then we'll see if we really need these things.
yeah. That's a great idea.
And I have gotten, and it was took a lot of negotiation, a lot of it was a, look, we all got along, so it wasn't like fighting, but it was definitely not ideal. And but I have since gotten positive feedback from that product management team of like, yeah, it turns out we didn't really need a lot of this stuff, and some of it was needed and got added, and some of it sometimes it was very painful to add it. I'm sorry, I should say it wasn't painful to add it. It was painful to wait while it got added.
Yeah,
Customers were having a bad experience. But so I think the real question I want to ask is, as an industry, as teams, why aren't we very good at that product cruft bloat grooming, and how could we be better at it?
yeah. That's a good question. I sort of was like, maybe there's like a Marie Kondo, like, does it spark joy? If
Yeah.
not, get rid of it. Is it? Did you use it yesterday, or does it spark joy? If not, get rid of it.
Yeah, I worked with a engineering director once who was really good at that. He was just great at throwing stuff out. I
Yeah,
wonder if it's because we don't account for the cost very well. So this was like going back to that way old John Helm conversation we had about 6 months ago. This was like a call option that came due. It wasn't causing you guys any harm until the minute it was.
yeah.
But so there was an expected cost. You could compute an expected value or an expected cost of just having that around.
Yeah, and I think that give the product team credit where they deserve it, that they did genuine, like, when we, in the retrospective now we're talking about it, and it's like there was a little bit of like, wait, we thought we had decommissioned all these accounts. And there was well, I made a choice, we made a choice, this customer was special. We wanted to like not add any friction to that customer, right?
Hmm.
I mean, I think that's a legitimate stance to take for your product team, right? Like, you
Sure.
want to be able to say like, hey, this is a legacy customer, they're a VIP customer, whatever the reasoning is, to say like that it's our perception that that feature is important to them,
Is valuable.
right? Is valuable to them. And that's the job of the product team, right? Like,
Hmm.
let's we're all in this together, and each of us have different jobs, and one of the jobs is to really be that strong advocate for what value the customer uh,
Hmm.
sees in a feature.
Hmm.
I think that in this particular case, it's complicated, and I'm not going to get into all the little gory details, but I think it's also the case that in this particular case, the engineering team, in retrospect, sort of silenced themselves. They cut themselves off early and didn't say, yeah, but this is a problem. Like this isn't just a thing of like an old feature that we'll have to kind of remember to work around or but like hey, it's got vulnerabilities to it. We should definitely we should aggressively get people off of this
It's a
thing.
different class. It's in a different class of its own because of those
Yeah, so it's not the
vulnerabilities.
same as like a cool little widget that the particular customer really loves, and you're kind of kind of working around it to keep it active, like
Hmm.
whatever. It doesn't fall into that category. It falls into a category of something that's a little bit more serious and probably should have been taken seriously. I think that I think again we're a pretty young organization, and I think we're learning to build out our processes. And if we had a little bit more process, there might have been a little bit more structure to the way we would have that conversation,
Hmm.
right? Like I think that again, it's not like we're not dealing with like if this had been at 98.6, right, then there'd obviously be like health related, HIPAA related things, SOC 2 related things, all these very strong compliance types of patterns would have kicked up, and there would have been a place to have that
Hmm.
conversation,
Yeah.
right? We're smaller, we're younger. This is kind of a much more lightweight related SaaS offering that is really about it doesn't have those types of implications. Doesn't typically have those kinds of like security type implications around
Hmm.
it. And we're
Hmm.
moving fast and we're trying to innovate and we're trying to build stuff. And I think that one of the we've talked about this in the past that one of the really cool things about being at a startup is that everyone has to be on their toes. Everyone has to, if they see something, they have to say something, right? There's nobody coming through the kitchen to clean up the dirty dishes, right? And so, if anything, I think the team probably in reflecting on this kind of feels like that's the piece they let down. That's the part they let down,
Yeah.
right? Where they accepted or didn't think to say, hey, like this is really important. Let's follow up on did we convert all these customers over?
Well, I feel like I heard your team learned two good things today. One, you need to have product management in your retrospectives.
Yep, which they
And
were, so
two,
that was good.
oh, they
And
were. Okay, I thought,
yeah, they were there. They were there, and I would say I feel like that's pretty important for most retrospectives,
yeah,
right?
for
Unless it's
sure.
really just a raw, it was only engineering involved, right? But if it's got any kind of a whiff of a product feature gone awry or a business process gone awry, I think you once told me a story about a retrospective where it was like a demo was happening in a place it shouldn't have been happening, and the demo caused some kind of system to go sideways or something like that. Um,
I don't remember that, but I'm sure that's happened.
so anyway, I think there's a lot of value in having some representative of your product team be part of retrospectives that
Yeah.
read on product features.
And the other thing I heard is there are certain classes of things that a team should push harder on.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, and that varies by business, but certainly security. I don't know if this is a security vulnerability, but certainly vulnerabilities of a certain type are one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And I
said
agree.
something.
That
Oh,
is kind of the way that those are, I think, the key. That second one in particular, I think, is the key takeaway. Because it was cascading failures. Of course, it was never one thing, right? It's
mhm.
cascading failures, right? Like, um, and I ironically, it's almost like the bug actually kind of helped mitigate the vulnerability. So it's almost like while fixing the bugs is when they discovered the vulnerability. And they're like, oh no, okay, wait a second, And so the cascading failures were all around like wow, the code review let the bug get through. The QA process let the bug get through. There was all kinds of cool, good things that came out of the retrospective. Why did the code review let the bug get through? It was a massive PR that was related to,
Mhm.
and in fact, it was about adding observability. Like the PR that introduced the bug was about adding observability.
Oh, the irony.
And so it was a classic like, oh, it's a big PR, but really it's only just sprinkling some if then statements around everything kind of thing, right? Let's, so how many times have we learned that lesson, right? Massive PRs are impossible to code review, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Hey,
the
can I ask a question about something you said earlier?
yeah, Yeah.
You said a phrase that I had never heard before.
Mm.
So now the patient, the client is going to teach the therapist here for a second.
Okay. Yes. Sure.
So you talked, I think you said well, I'm thinking of I'm gonna have the word wrong because the word in my head is OLED, like TVs now. But it's called like
OTEL.
OLED or OTEP something
OTEL.
observability. What's that?
Open telemetry.
Oh, what is that? I've never heard that before.
Open telemetry is a kind of industry pseudo standard, a little open source, a little bit kind of standard, and it's around like telemetry in general. A lot of the big telemetry providers like Datadog and Amazon and stuff like that, they have like OTel compatibility. But Open
Oh,
OTel stands for Open Telemetry.
hmm,
It's an open source project that has you know it essentially has coding plugins for all the different languages and all the different stacks, and it standardizes on the way that essentially the formatting of the telemetry data, so that people can build like data analyzers or data visualizers, and those visualizers can just say, "I support any open telemetry formatted
hmm,
telemetry data stream."
interesting. You learn something new every day, even when
Yeah,
you're
there you go.
not trying. Awesome. So you said something else in there that I wanted to ask about. It actually reminded me of a conversation I had today with somebody.
Hmm.
You said product management. This is a little bit of a pivot, by the way. This is a pivot of
Sure.
topic, if that's okay. You said that product management, their role is advocating for what's valuable to the customer. Okay, so um, I have a report that is produced on my team every month, which is a set of engineering KPIs. We have about 5 or 6 top level KPIs, but then overall, which is like the sort of executive summary. And but then overall, I bet there's about 40 different KPIs, and they include, things like cycle time. They include number of open bugs, average time to fix a bug, uptime, just lots of different KPIs. And they're all under the umbrella of this. How do we know if engineering is doing a good job?
Mm.
And I started
Okay.
doing this a while ago because I got frustrated that stakeholders would have opinions about whether the engineering team was doing a good job, and they were entirely subjective. And so I said, well, could we at
Yep.
least like try to quantify what are the things that you're actually expecting us to do, and could we try to quantify that? And so we've got that, and the stakeholders I work with really appreciate it because they appreciate the transparency. I think they don't really, but that's beside the point. I think it gives me a tool to tell the story of our team and how we're performing, and it also gives me sometimes it's you got to be vulnerable. I'll give you a concrete example. Last month, our mean time to response, which is one of our top 6 mean time for incident response, which is one of our top 6 metrics, was bad because we had an incident that we did not respond to for 2 days. And so we have like a
Oh
five
man.
minute SLA, and it was like 213 minutes on average for that month, right? So because we didn't,
Yeah, you have one 2 day response with a 5 day SLA or 5 minute SLA, and you're pretty much screwed for the until you reset the
right. But it's
counter.
a tool for us as a team both to tell our story, but for us to also know, like, hey, this is what is important to us, right? As a team, in
Totally.
terms of both operating our system and uh, delivering new software. So, okay, so just today, somebody asked me, someone on the engineering team asked, well, how do we know if product management is doing a good job? And I said to
Okay.
myself, that's a good question. How do we know if product management is doing a good job? And that's the question I want to ask you. How do we know if product management is doing a good job? And is there a set of KPIs that we could put to that? And to be a little bit fair to you and to product managers out there, I've been thinking about this set of KPIs that I use for engineering for my entire career, pretty much. So it's taken a
Yeah,
while to
totally.
refine it, but maybe it'll take like another 30 years to figure out the stuff for product management. But maybe there's some product managers or some product chief product officers or whatever out there that know. But I don't know. What do you think? How do we know? What quantitative way could we know if product management is doing a good job?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I would love to get some chief product officers to come onto the pod and talk to us about that. I think that's something that, early on in us talking about doing this, Bob, you talked about the idea of like bringing in these stakeholders from different disciplines and talking to them about their experiences in working with CTOs, and I think this would be a great topic to dive into with them. Like, what is the models that they have seen work successfully between kind of like managing the that relationship, and a piece of that relationship between engineering and product is the what what is the definition of a successful product team?
Well, if you're one of our 39 listeners out there, if you are a chief product officer or no one, we would love to hear from you. But let's talk about this. So this is okay. I have a few ideas, not comprehensive, but
Yeah.
certainly one of them is I think of product managers as investors. They're investing engineering time, which is money because we pay wages to engineers. And what is the ROI on those investments?
Hmm.
It's actually the first one is, well, how accurate are you at predicting the ROI on an investment? And then there's an even more basic one of the features on your backlog. What percentage of the investments on your backlog have you calculated an estimated ROI for? That's like the very basic, right? Just do we even attempt to try and see if these investments are worthwhile?
Yeah, totally. And I think that I think that sort of opens this can of, maybe it's worms, I don't know, but it opens a can around, how do you measure the result of a feature, right? Like an obvious, like you and I talked about this on a we we discussed this on an episode once before for a few minutes, where it's like, okay, like just because sale number go up, revenue number go up, that doesn't mean that it was the features that got asked for that made the
Right,
revenue
right.
number go up, right? It could have just been like better marketing that month, or better sales that month, or all of a sudden, a customer started using your product
Hmm.
more, like they could be using the old features,
Yeah,
not the new features, right?
you could run a
So
split
yeah, I think
test,
it's really
an A/B test.
yeah, certainly if you have enough scale to do A/B testing, that's certainly the type
Yeah,
of thing that you can do. I also think that there are other kind of classic metrics like Net Promoter Score and things like that, where you're going to kind of try to judge, like, does your customer base love your product or not? Does that change over time when you add more features? Yeah, it's a good question. I do think that you're right that the main value add that we would expect from a product team is identifying the surface area of customer needs that the customers value enough that they will exchange money for that
right.
value, right? Like that's the most important role
Hmm.
of product,
I agree.
I think. Um, and so any metric that's going to help us measure that is certainly going to be a good metric.
I think about like how could we put a metric around they wrote, the product manager wrote good requirements.
Yeah, I mean there are like certainly a whole bunch of logistical things that matter too. Like I'll pivot a little bit, but let's stick to the topic of the role of product management. I'm a big believer that you can't do a bug triage, or you can't do a kind of technical debt assessment without having the voice of product there, right? Like I need to know, like the product owner needs to tell me if a bug really reads on that customer value or not, right? And if there's a bunch of bugs or a bunch of deficits in
Hmm.
some manner that is having some kind of a drag or some kind of a negative effect on the value perceived by the customer, then I need a great product partner who's going to be able to help me weigh those two things. Like, hey, do I want to add this new whiz bang feature, or do I actually want you to go improve the behavior of existing features by fixing bugs, by making them faster, or whatever that might be? And that, to me, that's an inherently a product question, not an engineering question.
Take, I agree 100%. To me, bug
Yeah.
triage is a product management function because to us, to engineering, it's just an item in the back in the sprint backlog. And you could pick a
Yeah, totally.
fixing an old item or making a new item. It's just a thing we're gonna chew up and spit out the other end.
Yeah. So So I think that that falls into that category. So like the whole like how quickly does it take us to adjudicate? So like how quickly do we fix bugs? Like maybe that should go on the
Yeah.
engineering KPI. But how quickly do we adjudicate whether or not we're going to
Mm,
fix the bug?
could be. Yeah.
That feels to me like a KPI that should almost live in the product owner KPI list, not the engineering
Yeah.
owner KPI list.
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
And I think there's just a handful of those types of things. So you mentioned like, you know, what's the, you know, some qualitative measure of the description of the specification of the new
Hmm.
features, you know, whatever that might be, some kind of a way to, you know, measure that. To me, that adjudication of bugs, you know, some sort of ROI analysis of feature. These are all types of like logistical things that I think relate to like, are we capturing the value to the
Yeah.
customer of the software
Yeah.
we're building?
Well, that's one dimension, and then the other dimension is, is the product manager effectively conveying to the engineer what to build? Right, a product manager kind of, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
product manager. Product manager is a tough job. To acknowledge all the product managers out there, we love you. I have worked as a product manager before. I've also worked as a manager of product managers before, so I get it. We have a hard, we product manager. I'm putting my product manager hat on. We have many jobs. One of them is understanding the marketplace, the landscape, et cetera, looking, finding opportunities and problems. That's like a kind of, I think of that as the outward facing job. And then we've got a prioritization job of like, how do we judge what order we put these in? And then we have a communication job of like, how do we tee this up for the engineering team to go execute on it? And, some companies do that, I mean, depending on what you're building and all sorts of cultural issues with a very detailed spec. And with some people, it's just a conversation. That's what Agile was about, what Scrum was about. Right? Let's just have a conversation and go build some stuff, and we'll come back and tell you and you tell us if it works for you.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, and then there's that's all kind of the input stuff, and then the output stuff too. You've got like depending on where you divide the lines between product and kind of
Hmm.
sales and marketing too. You've got the how do you communicate the value, you know, to the team that's communicating the value to
And all the
potential
go-to-market
customers.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like I I'm feeling like I was heard, Scott. Uh,
Well, I was feeling like we're almost 30 minutes into this conversation and we have not talked about AI yet,
are you sure you want to talk about AI in this
which
episode,
to me is
or
therapeutic all by itself.
I love it. Well,
Well, Brad,
what do you want to say about
it's
AI?
been a good talk today. I don't have anything to say about AI today, but
We
maybe
didn't
we'll,
talk about AI at all. Well, we'll make sure we cover it next because there's always something new happening in AI.
all right. Well, until next week, Brad,
All right, till next week.
smash that subscribe button, rate and review.
Rate and review.
Bye, everyone.
This episode of How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast was edited by Saffron Hefta-Gaub. Our theme song was AI generated by Brad. Please follow us on all the social media platforms at How Many CTOs Pod. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, TikTok, and Patreon, or at our website at howmanyctospod.com. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks for listening.